Ever wondered what it's like inside Russia's toughest prison?
Russia's Black Dolphin prison houses some of the country's toughest, most violent criminals.
Welcome to Black Dolphin, a place where the country's most notorious criminals are sent. Imagine a world where the mere mention of its name sends shivers down the spine. Ready to dive into these dark waters? Let's go. Number 1. Sedamirov, the fallen mayor. Sedamirov's story reads like a script from a gritty political thriller, only it's all too real. Once a powerful mayor of Dagestan's capital, Makhachkala, Amirov's fall from grace was as dramatic as his rise to power. Known as the Iron Mayor, he held his position for nearly 2 decades, a reign marked by controversy and power struggles. But what really lands you in a place like Black Dolphin? Not just any crime, we're talking about the heavy stuff. Amirov was convicted for plotting a terrorist attack and murder. Yeah, you heard that right. It's not every day that a high-ranking official gets nabbed for such chilling charges. In the complex and often murky world of Russian politics, Amirov's case stood out for its sheer audacity. Imagine orchestrating a deadly attack against a rival. It's the stuff of gangster movies, but for Amirov, it was a brutal reality. His journey to Black Dolphin, Russia's most notorious high-security prison, was a stark contrast to the power and luxury he once enjoyed. Picture this. A place so harsh prisoners are blindfolded whenever they move around. The cells? They're more like cages, and inmates spend 23 hours a day in solitary confinement. It's a far cry from the life of a mayor, right? At Black Dolphin, Amirov's life underwent a complete transformation. Gone were the days of commanding authority and influence. Here, he was just another inmate, subject to the strictest of regimes. The prison, notorious for housing the worst of the worst, became his new reality. It's a place where the Russian penal system's toughest rules are the norm, and stories of redemption are hard to come by. Number 2. Vladimir Dragoner, the enigmatic criminal. Vladimir Dragoner's story is not your typical rags-to-riches tale. It's more of a descent into the dark abyss of crime. Dragoner, a name that might not ring many bells, but in the underworld, it echoed with a mix of respect and fear. His journey from obscurity to becoming one of Russia's most notorious criminals is a twisted tale of ambition, power, and a descent into infamy. Dragoner's early life was shrouded in mystery. He was not one to share his past, preferring to let his actions speak for themselves. And speak they did. He quickly rose through the ranks of the criminal world, earning a reputation as a mastermind of organized crime. From racketeering to extortion, Dragoner had his fingers in every pie. He was the kind of guy who believed in making his own luck, and unfortunately, his idea of luck meant trouble for many. But what set Dragoner apart was not just his criminal activities, it was his enigmatic persona. He was a man of few words, preferring to operate from the shadows. This elusive nature only added to his mystique, making him a figure of intrigue and speculation. Some say he had a charm about him, a charisma that could sway even the most hardened of criminals. But beneath that charm was a ruthless individual who would stop at nothing to achieve his goals. Dragoner's fall was as dramatic as his rise. His capture and subsequent imprisonment in Black Dolphin was a testament to the saying, "The higher you climb, the harder you fall." Black Dolphin, a name that strikes fear in the hearts of even the most hardened criminals, became Dragoner's new home. It's a place where the sun barely shines, both literally and metaphorically. The rules here are simple. You follow them, or you suffer the consequences. In Black Dolphin, Dragoner found himself in an environment far removed from the world he once controlled. The prison, known for its extreme regime, was a place where even someone as formidable as Dragoner was just another inmate. The constant surveillance The lack of human interaction and the stringent routines were a far cry from the life of freedom and power he once enjoyed. It's like going from being the king of the jungle to a caged animal, watched every moment and allowed only the bare minimum of freedoms. Number 3. Vadim Ershov, the shadowy figure. Vadim Ershov's story is not one of those that grab headlines with flashy crimes or high-speed chases. Instead, his tale is one of shadows and whispers, where his presence was felt but rarely seen. In the world of crime, Ershov was like a ghost, always there but never quite tangible. His criminal journey is a testament to the power of being unseen and unheard. Ershov's entry into the world of crime was not marked by a grand event or a sudden shift. It was a gradual descent, a slow but steady movement towards the darker side. He wasn't the kind to make a splash. Rather, he preferred to operate from the background, silently orchestrating events to his favor. His crimes ranged from fraud to embezzlement, and while they may not sound as dramatic as a heist or a murder, they were no less significant. What made Ershov a figure of interest was his methodical approach to crime. He was a planner, a thinker, always 2 steps ahead of everyone else. This shadowy figure had a knack for avoiding the spotlight, making it all the more difficult for law enforcement to pin him down. It's like trying to catch a wisp of smoke. You know it's there, but you just can't grasp it. However, every criminal, no matter how careful, leaves a trail. Ershov's eventual capture and imprisonment in Black Dolphin marked the end of his elusive escapades. Black Dolphin, a name that conjures images of darkness and despair, became Ershov's new reality, a reality far removed from the shadows he was so accustomed to. Life in Black Dolphin is no walk in the park. It's a place designed to break the spirit of those who enter its gates. For someone like Ershov, who thrived in the shadows, the constant surveillance and lack of privacy in the prison must have been suffocating. Imagine going from being a phantom, barely noticed by anyone, to being watched every second of every day. That's a tough pill to swallow. In Black Dolphin, Ershov's anonymity was stripped away. He was no longer the shadowy figure, but just another inmate, subject to the same rigorous routines and strict rules as everyone else. The transition from being an unseen force to a visible, monitored prisoner was a drastic change for Ershov, one that he had to adapt to, willingly or not. Number 4. Farit Gabidulin, the ruthless leader. In the notorious annals of Russian crime, the name Farit Gabidulin stands out for its sheer ruthlessness and cold-hearted leadership. Gabidulin wasn't just a criminal. He was a kingpin, a master of his dark domain. His rise to the top of the criminal hierarchy is a tale of brutality, cunning, and an iron will to dominate. Gabidulin's foray into the world of crime began early. He wasn't the type to shy away from violence. In fact, it was his tool of choice. He quickly made a name for himself through a series of brutal acts, each more chilling than the last. From extortion to cold-blooded murder, Gabidulin's hands were stained with the blood of his deeds. He led his gang with an iron fist, ensuring loyalty through fear and intimidation. What made Gabidulin particularly dangerous was his strategic mind. He wasn't just a brute. He was a tactician. He knew how to play the game, manipulating both his allies and enemies with a cunning that was both admired and feared. His criminal network grew, spreading its tentacles across various illegal ventures. Gabidulin was not just a participant in the criminal world. He was its architect, crafting an empire built on fear and blood. However, as history has often shown, even the mightiest fall. Gabidulin's reign of terror eventually led to his downfall. His capture and subsequent imprisonment in Black Dolphin prison marked the end of an era. Black Dolphin, a name synonymous with Russia's toughest penal regime, became Gabidulin's new kingdom, albeit a far cry from the one he once ruled. The transition from a feared leader to a controlled inmate was dramatic for Gabadulin. Black Dolphin is notorious for its strict regime. Inmates are under constant surveillance, their every move monitored and controlled. For someone used to having absolute power, this loss of control was a severe blow. Gabadulin found himself in a world where he was just another number, a far cry from the feared criminal leader he once was. Number 5. Vadim Krotov, the man behind the mask. Vadim Krotov's tale is one of intrigue and duplicity, a story of a man who lived behind a mask of respectability while orchestrating some of the most heinous crimes. Krotov, unlike the archetypal thug or gangster, presented himself as a respectable figure, a facade that allowed him to operate in the shadows without suspicion. His life is a classic example of the duality of human nature, where one's outward appearance belies their true intentions. Krotov's journey into the criminal underworld was not marked by poverty or desperation, the usual precursors to a life of crime. Instead, his path was driven by a desire for power and control. He was a manipulator, a master of deception. His crimes were not random acts of violence, but calculated moves in a chess game only he knew he was playing. From fraud to conspiracy, his criminal portfolio was diverse, each act carefully planned and executed. The true extent of Krotov's criminal activities was a shock to many who thought they knew him. How could a man who seemed so ordinary, so benign, be capable of such dark deeds? This question lingered in the air as law enforcement unraveled the intricate web of crimes he had woven over the years. His ability to lead a double life, to be both the trusted individual and the criminal mastermind, was a testament to his cunning and intelligence. However, even the most clever criminal cannot evade the law forever. Krotov's eventual capture and incarceration in Black Dolphin prison marked the end of his dual life. Black Dolphin, a name that evokes fear and despair, became his new abode, a place where masks are useless and one's true self is laid bare. The prison, known for its harsh conditions and strict regime, was a stark contrast to the life of deceit and manipulation Krotov had led. Number 6. Sergei Maduev, the silent threat. Sergei Maduev's story is a chilling reminder of how some of the most dangerous individuals are those who operate in silence. Unlike the loud, attention-seeking criminals, Maduev was the epitome of a silent threat. His criminal acts, though not always in the spotlight, were no less dangerous and destructive. He was a figure who preferred to operate under the radar, making him all the more menacing. Maduev's journey into the criminal world was marked by a series of calculated and cold-blooded acts. He was not one for grand gestures or public displays of power. Instead, he focused on covert operations, often involving serious criminal activities like drug trafficking and armed robbery. What made Maduev particularly dangerous was his ability to stay off the grid, making it difficult for law enforcement to track his movements and activities. Despite his low profile, Maduev's criminal resume was extensive. He had a hand in numerous illegal ventures, each carried out with precision and a lack of remorse. His silent demeanor was not a sign of weakness, but a strategic choice, allowing him to commit his crimes without drawing undue attention. This approach made him a phantom-like figure in the criminal underworld, known to few but feared by many. However, even the most cautious criminals slip up, and Maduev was no exception. His eventual capture and incarceration in Black Dolphin prison marked the end of his silent reign. Black Dolphin, a name synonymous with the strictest levels of security and control, became Maduev's new, unavoidable reality. The prison, notorious for its harsh conditions and stringent routines, was a drastic change for someone who thrived in the shadows. Number 7. Andrei Melyuk, the unseen danger. Andrei Melyuk's story is akin to a dark shadow in the world of crime, an unseen danger that lurked beneath the surface, unnoticed yet ever present. Melyuk was not the kind of criminal who basked in the limelight of his nefarious deeds. Instead, he operated in the background, orchestrating crimes that were both sophisticated and sinister. His life is a testament to the fact that sometimes the most dangerous individuals are those who remain out of sight. Melyuk's criminal endeavors were diverse and complex, ranging from sophisticated financial fraud to intricate smuggling operations. He was a mastermind in the truest sense, always several steps ahead of law enforcement and his criminal counterparts. Melyuk's approach to crime was methodical and calculated, preferring to use his intellect rather than brute force to achieve his ends. This cerebral approach made him a formidable figure in the underworld, a man who could orchestrate grand schemes without ever revealing his hand. The most intriguing aspect of Melyuk's criminal career was his ability to remain anonymous. He was like a ghost, there one moment and gone the next. His identity was a mystery, and this anonymity allowed him to operate without attracting the attention of the authorities. This elusive nature made him an unseen danger, a threat that was difficult to quantify because it was hard to pin down. However, the law has a way of catching up, no matter how elusive the criminal. Melyuk's eventual capture and subsequent incarceration in Black Dolphin prison mark at the end of his shadowy existence. Black Dolphin, renowned for its strict security measures and the formidable reputation of housing Russia's most dangerous criminals, was a stark contrast to the obscure world Melyuk had thrived in. Number 8. Vladimir Mukhankin, the Quiet Menace. In the annals of Russian criminal history, Vladimir Mukhankin's name might not immediately stand out, but his story is one of silent yet profound menace. Mukhankin was the kind of criminal who operated not with a bang, but a whisper. His background and path to infamy were marked by a quiet and steady accumulation of power and influence, making him a formidable figure in the underworld. Mukhankin's journey into the criminal world was not one of sudden descent, but rather a gradual slide into the depths of illegality. He had a knack for blending in, appearing as just another face in the crowd while orchestrating some of the most sophisticated criminal operations. His activities ranged from intricate money laundering schemes to the orchestration of illegal trade networks. Mukhankin was not just a participant in these criminal ventures. He was a puppeteer, pulling the strings from behind the scenes. What set Mukhankin apart was his low-profile approach to crime. He avoided the flashy lifestyle that many of his contemporaries embraced. This understated manner was his greatest asset, allowing him to fly under the radar of law enforcement and rivals alike. He was a quiet menace, a threat that was all the more dangerous because it was so difficult to detect. Despite his careful planning and low profile, Mukhankin eventually found himself ensnared by the law. His arrest and subsequent imprisonment in Black Dolphin prison marked a significant turning point in his life. Black Dolphin, with its notorious reputation for housing Russia's most dangerous criminals, was a world away from the quiet shadows where Mukhankin had once thrived. Number 9. Yevgeny Nagorny, the Cold Operator. Yevgeny Nagorny's tale in the world of crime is one that chills to the bone, not because of its flamboyance, but due to its cold, calculated nature. Nagorny, known as the Cold Operator, was a figure who epitomized the idea of a criminal mastermind, orchestrating some of the most complex and chilling crimes with a detachment that was as impressive as it was terrifying. Nagorny's entry into the criminal underworld was marked not by a dramatic event, but by a series of calculated choices that led him deeper into a life of illegality. His crimes were varied, encompassing everything from high-stakes robberies to intricate smuggling operations. But what set Nagorny apart was not just the scale of his crimes, but the manner in which he conducted them. He was like a chess player, always thinking several moves ahead, his emotions never interfering with his plans. This cold and methodical approach earned him a reputation as someone who could get things done, no matter how complex or risky. He was not one for unnecessary violence or showmanship. Instead, Nagorny preferred to remain in the background, a shadowy figure pulling the strings, his true intentions hidden behind a veil of calm detachment. Number 10. Carola Neher, the Forgotten Convict. Carola Neher's story is one that stands out in the annals of crime, not just for the nature of her offenses, but for the way she seems to have been forgotten by history. Neher was a convict whose tale is shrouded in mystery and intrigue, a narrative that weaves through the dark corridors of criminal acts, leading to a life spent behind the formidable walls of Black Dolphin prison. Neher's journey into the world of crime was unlike that of her infamous counterparts. Her transgressions were marked by a unique blend of cunning and audacity. She was not a criminal who relied on brute force or intimidation. Instead, her methods were more subtle, yet equally effective. Neher had a talent for deception and manipulation, skills she employed to orchestrate a series of crimes that were as clever as they were illicit. Her criminal activities were diverse, ranging from intricate fraud schemes to more serious offenses. Each act she committed was a testament to her intelligence and resourcefulness. However, what truly set Neher apart was her ability to remain under the radar, to commit her crimes without drawing undue attention. This elusive nature made her a figure of intrigue in the criminal world, a ghost who was heard of but seldom seen. Number 12. Vladimir Nikolaev, the Murderer's Path. Vladimir Nikolaev's journey is a dark and disturbing tale, etched into the annals of criminal history for its sheer brutality. His story is not one of petty crimes or small-time misdemeanors. It is a saga of heinous acts, a path marked by murder and mayhem. Nikolaev was a murderer, a title that he carried not as a burden but as a badge of his ruthless nature. Nikolaev's descent into the depths of criminality was marked by a series of increasingly violent acts. He wasn't just a killer. He was a predator, stalking his victims with a cold and calculating precision. His crimes were not crimes of passion or spur-of-the-moment acts of violence. They were deliberate, planned, and executed with a chilling detachment. Each act of murder committed by Nikolaev was a testament to his complete disregard for human life, a trait that made him one of the most feared figures in the criminal underworld. What made Nikolaev particularly dangerous was his ability to blend into society. He was not an outcast or a social pariah. He was a man who could walk the streets without arousing suspicion, all the while harboring a dark and deadly secret. This ability to hide in plain sight made his crimes all the more shocking and his capture all the more imperative. Number 13. Alexei Pichugin, the Unrepentant Operative. Alexei Pichugin's story is one of intrigue and betrayal, a tale that paints a picture of a man who walked through life with a cold, unrepentant heart. As a former operative, Pichugin's background was steeped in secrecy and deception, skills that he later turned towards more nefarious purposes. His transition from a shadowy operative to a convicted criminal is a tale of moral ambiguity and a relentless pursuit of self-interest. Pichugin's early career was marked by his work in secretive operations, where he honed his skills in surveillance, intelligence gathering, and covert activities. This background laid the groundwork for his later criminal activities, providing him with the knowledge and expertise needed to orchestrate complex and illegal operations. He was not just a participant in these activities, he was a mastermind, using his experience and skills to manipulate situations to his advantage. His criminal activities were diverse, ranging from high-stakes corporate espionage to more severe offenses that betrayed a complete disregard for the law and moral ethics. Pichugin operated with a calculated efficiency, leaving little room for errors or emotional considerations. This cold, methodical approach made him a formidable figure in the criminal world, a man who could plan and execute with a chilling precision. Number 14. Mikhail Popkov, the Dark Enforcer. Mikhail Popkov's story is a descent into the darkest realms of human behavior, a narrative that shocks and horrifies in equal measure. Known as the Dark Enforcer, Popkov's criminal activities are the stuff of nightmares, marked by extreme violence and a complete disregard for human life. His was a reign of terror that left an indelible mark on the annals of criminal history. Popkov's entry into the world of crime was not just an escalation of petty offenses. It was a leap into a chasm of extreme violence and brutality. His crimes were heinous, characterized by a level of cruelty that was almost incomprehensible. He was not just a murderer, he was a predator who took pleasure in the suffering of his victims. His acts of violence were so extreme, so depraved, that they sent shockwaves through society, painting a picture of a man who was more monster than human. Despite his reign of terror, Popkov's capture and imprisonment were inevitable. His incarceration in Black Dolphin prison marked the end of his Dark Enforcer days. Black Dolphin, a name synonymous with the harshest prison conditions in Russia, became Popkov's new realm, a place where his past atrocities would haunt him, a place where he would be forced to confront the enormity of his crimes. Number 15. Oleg Rylkov, the Quiet Mastermind. Oleg Rylkov's story is a fascinating study of a criminal mastermind who preferred to operate from the shadows, orchestrating his illegal endeavors with a quiet yet commanding presence. Unlike the brash and often reckless figures commonly associated with high-profile crimes, Rylkov's approach was characterized by subtlety, intelligence, and an uncanny ability to remain unnoticed while pulling the strings of a vast criminal network. Rylkov's entry into the criminal world was marked not by a dramatic initiation, but by a gradual and calculated involvement in increasingly complex criminal activities. He was the brain behind various illegal operations, ranging from sophisticated financial frauds to large-scale smuggling. His real power lay in his strategic thinking and meticulous planning. Rylkov wasn't just involved in criminal activities. He was a chess player in the game of crime, always thinking several moves ahead of his opponents and the authorities. One of the most intriguing aspects of Rylkov's criminal career was his ability to maintain a low profile. He wasn't known for a lavish lifestyle or a flamboyant display of his ill-gotten gains. Instead, he maintained an air of normalcy, blending into society while covertly controlling his criminal empire. This discretion was his armor, shielding him from the scrutiny of law enforcement and rival criminals alike.